Hello everyone, and welcome back to History of the Ancient World. Today we're diving into one of the most revolutionary inventions in human history. An innovation so powerful, it has shaped the way billions of people read, write, and think. We're talking about the Phoenician alphabet. You might be surprised to learn how this ancient script, created by a civilization of maritime traders, became the ancestor of nearly every alphabet used in the Western world today, including the one I'm using to script this video and the one you use every single day. So how did this happen? How did a set of 22 simple symbols change the course of history? Let's set sail back in time and find out. Before the Phoenicians, writing was a complicated business. Think of Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform. These systems were incredibly complex, often involving hundreds, if not thousands, of characters. You had logograms representing whole words, syllabic signs representing sounds, and determinatives to clarify meaning. Learning to read and write was a lifelong endeavor, a skill reserved for a small, elite class of scribes, priests, and royalty. It wasn't something the average person could ever hope to master. Writing was a tool of power, used to record royal decrees, religious texts, and complex administrative records. It was not for writing a shopping list or a letter to a friend. This is where the Phoenicians enter the story. The Phoenicians were not a massive land-based empire like the Egyptians or Babylonians. They were a collection of independent city-states located along the coast of the modern-day Levant, in what is now Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. Their most famous cities were Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos. What they lacked in land, they more than made up for on the sea. They were the master mariners and traders of the ancient world. Their ships crisscrossed the Mediterranean, establishing colonies and trade routes from the eastern shores all the way to the Atlantic. They traded in valuable goods like cedar wood, luxurious purple dye made from sea snails, glass, and metals. For a people constantly on the move, dealing with different cultures, languages, and business partners, the old cumbersome writing systems just weren't practical. A merchant in a bustling port needed a quick, efficient way to record transactions, track cargo, and communicate with partners across the sea. They didn't have time to master thousands of hieroglyphs. They needed a system that was simple, easy to learn, and adaptable. And out of this necessity, the Phoenician alphabet was born around 1050 BC. The genius of the Phoenician system was its elegant simplicity. Instead of using pictures to represent words, it used symbols to represent sounds, specifically consonant sounds. This is what we call an abjad. Their alphabet consisted of just 22 letters. 22, down from the hundreds or thousands of characters of older scripts. Each letter corresponded to a single consonant sound in their Semitic language. For example, the first letter, Aleph, represented a glottal stop. The second letter, Beth, represented the B sound. Sound familiar? Aleph. Beth, alpha. Beta, alphabet. Yes, the very word we use today comes directly from the names of the first two Phoenician letters. Let's look at the letters themselves. They weren't just random squiggles. Many of the Phoenician letters were derived from earlier Proto-Sinaitic scripts, which were themselves inspired by Egyptian hieroglyphs. But the Phoenicians stripped them down to their bare essentials. For example, the hieroglyph for an ox was a detailed picture of an ox's head with horns. The Phoenicians simplified this into Aleph, a simple abstract symbol that looked a bit like a rotated A. The hieroglyph for a house, a boxy shape, was simplified into Beth, which looked like a B on its side. Each letter had a name that was also a common word starting with that sound. Aleph meant ox, Beth meant house, Gimel meant camel, Daleth meant door, and so on. This made the letters much easier to remember. It was a mnemonic device built right into the system. This simplicity was the key to its success. A system with only 22 symbols could be learned in a matter of weeks, not years. Suddenly, literacy was no longer the exclusive domain of the elite. A merchant, a sailor, a craftsman, anyone could learn to read and write. This democratized knowledge in a way that was previously unimaginable. It empowered the individual and fueled the commercial engine of the Phoenician civilization. Imagine being able to send a clear, unambiguous message to a business partner in a distant port, or keeping your own detailed ledgers without needing to hire an expensive scribe. This was a game changer. And because the Phoenicians were everywhere, their alphabet went with them. As their ships docked in ports across the Mediterranean, they brought not just their goods, but also their revolutionary writing system. Other cultures saw the immense advantage of this simple script and began to adapt it for their own languages. One of the most significant adoptions was by the Greeks. Around the 8th century BC, the Greeks borrowed the Phoenician alphabet. However, the Greek language has many more vowel sounds than Semitic languages. So the Greeks did something brilliant. They took some of the Phoenician consonant letters for which they had no corresponding sound and repurposed them to represent vowels. For instance, the Phoenician aleph, that glottal stop sound that didn't exist in Greek, became the vowel alpha. Our A. The Phoenician letter he became epsilon, our E. They added a few new letters as well, but the core was Phoenician. This was the final crucial step, the creation of the first true alphabet, a system with distinct symbols for both consonants and vowels. This Greek alphabet then spread throughout their own sphere of influence. The story doesn't end there. From Greece, the alphabet journeyed to Italy. The Etruscans, a civilization in ancient Italy, adapted the Greek alphabet for their own use. And then the Romans adapted the Etruscan alphabet to write Latin. The Romans modified the shapes of some letters and dropped others, eventually settling on the Latin alphabet that is now the most widely used alphabetic writing system in the world. The letters you're seeing on your screen right now are direct descendants of those Roman, Greek, and ultimately Phoenician symbols. Think about it. The letter M comes from the Phoenician letter mem, which meant water and was originally written as a wavy line. The letter N comes from nun, which meant snake or fish and looked like a wriggling serpent. The O comes from ayin, which meant eye, and was originally drawn as a circle. Every time you type a text, write an email, or read a book, you are using a technology that is over 3,000 years old, passed down to you from ancient seafaring traders. The influence of the Phoenician alphabet wasn't limited to Europe. Its family tree is vast and sprawling. The Aramaic alphabet, another direct descendant, became the official script of the Persian Empire and gave rise to a host of other scripts, including the modern Hebrew and Arabic alphabets. The Brahmi script of ancient India, which is the ancestor to dozens of scripts across South and Southeast Asia, may also have been influenced by the Aramaic, and therefore Phoenician script. The reach of those 22 symbols is truly global. So while the Phoenician civilization itself eventually declined and was absorbed by larger empires, their intellectual legacy is immortal. They didn't build colossal pyramids or leave behind epic poems of gods and heroes. Their legacy is something far more intimate, something we interact with every single day. They created a tool that broke down the barriers to knowledge, empowered ordinary people, and fundamentally changed the way information is transmitted and preserved. The Phoenician alphabet is a perfect example of how a simple, practical solution to a common problem can have world-altering consequences that echo through millennia. It's a quiet revolution, but one of the most profound in all of human history. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the history of the ancient world. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Phoenician alphabet, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more stories from our shared past. Let us know in the comments what ancient innovation you'd like to see us cover next. We'll see you in the next video.